next few minutes, I'm going to show you a little bit about the Zero SR. It's an all-electric bike manufactured in the United States. Now, without getting too deep into it, Zero began in 2007 in Santa Cruz, California. The name Zero was born from the idea of zero emissions, and they've been producing electric bikes since that time. And because of that experience, the Zero SR is one of the most advanced electric bikes on the market. So this is almost like a comparo of electric versus the rest. In this review, I want to get straight to the bike because the riding experience is so different to what we're all used to. Here's what really stood out to me. The first thing I was curious about was the throttle response. Riding a normal combustion engine bike to an experienced rider, it's so intuitive. The feeling is ingrained. With the Zero, I wasn't sure what to expect, whether it would snap on or whether it would be easy to manage. If I had to pick one element where I really think this bike nails it above all others, it's throttle control. From a standing start, in the middle of corners, roll-ons, it doesn't matter. The response is silky smooth and predictable every time. There are no gears, no clutch, just twist and go. It also gives a feeling of being very connected to the machine, which I guess comes from removing the variable of fueling. And with that, the Zero has 3 different torque maps: Eco, Sport and Custom. They're pretty self-explanatory and practical. Eco is great when you need to save battery or when the weather is bad. Sport is good for normal riding, and in Custom you can dial up your own settings through the app and change parameters like braking regeneration. As the names imply, Eco gives a totally soft response on the throttle, maybe comparable to a 600cc Lamb's bike or similar. In Sport mode, it's a big step up. The power is direct, the torque is huge. Max power, 67 horsepower. Torque, 144 Newton meters. To put that in perspective, a Yamaha MT-07 produces 55 kilowatts, but only 68 Newton meters of torque. Ducati Monster, 100 kilowatts, 118 Newton meters of torque. Those figures paint your picture. The Zero has the power of a supersport machine, but the torque of a superbike. Acceleration is about on par with a supersport bike, and I would rate the overall feeling as supersport, not on steroids, but maybe on peptides. Now, battery life is the next consideration. Zero say the battery is good for about 250 Ks. I found it really depends on how hard you ride. If you spend some time in eco mode, maybe take it easy, you could definitely get close to that 250 mark. If you ride it like a normal bike and have a bit of fun, I think you'd be looking more about 200 Ks, maybe a bit less. I didn't fully test it out because I was aware I might leave myself in the lurch. But if I owned one, I'd have stacks of fun finding out. Now, which brings me to charge times. To fully charge the battery, it takes 8 hours overnight. And I found the analogy of it being like your iPhone. You come home, you put it on charge, that's just about it. It's about developing a habit. You can use 240 mains power with a normal kettle style plug. Now, Zero do provide a fast charge pack that can chop that time to almost 2 hours. And you get a power pack accessory to extend the range out to over 300 Ks, which is getting where it needs to be. The downside is that power pack weighs about 20 kilos. This leads on to handling. If you take a look at the front of the bike, you'll notice that's where the engine normally is, but instead it's all battery. The Zero weighs in at 188 kilograms, which isn't too bad, but it still feels fairly nimble. But because of the constraints of the rectangular battery, it carries that weight differently to a normal bike. If you think about it, there's been decades of engineering development for combustion engines and their components, so everything fits nicely and efficiently. On an electric bike, there's this big, heavy battery. It changes the center of gravity, as well as providing heaps of headaches for engineers. I'd say it took me about 36 hours to get used to it. Then it felt fine. Handling-wise, this bike feels planted to the road, and as I said, the throttle control is awesome. The braking, very good feel. You'd never know it's a single disc, and it's got to work well because the bike's a bit heavier. And this is a big thing because I think to have the most fun on this bike, it's more of a matter of getting it stopped and turning rather than holding high corner speed. But the big adjustment is the center of gravity. This is where it's hard to get used to compared to a normal bike. And to be honest, even the horsepower comparos don't tell the whole story. Riding an electric bike feels like you're in a Star Wars scene. The experience is so different, and I became more and more comfortable as the days went on. Now, the components are mostly familiar to what we're all used to, but because the bike reacts differently to the weight placement, traditional engineering goes out the window. Even down to tyre selection, the Pirelli Diablo Rosso feels solid, but you are aware that there's only a 140 section on the rear, so you ride accordingly. And when you read all this, it's starting to sound like I could be a convert. The sound, the looks, the Zero builds a pretty strong case. Maintenance is also an attraction, or lack thereof. There are hardly any internal moving parts, and it's belt drive, huge savings right there. In the city, there's no doubt it's a fun machine, and I really got used to the simplicity of no noise in the morning, just going to work. It just feels good, the serenity. Now twist the throttle and it's a weapon, but there is one major letdown, and that's the price. I spoke to so many people on the street, and most estimated the price to be around 12 to 15K. Now I think that's about on the money. At over 26K, I think this limits the Zero to the most committed of early adopters, and which is a shame considering the build quality. Now for my money, the Zero needs to be that little bit better across the board to get me seriously looking at it, but it's close. This is the future. Now if you're that unstoppable early adopter or committed to the environment, come and have a ride and see what you think.